Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, I am Shelley and I am mummy to three little girls, Sophie who is 10, Amy who is 6 and Ellie who is nearly 11 months old. Now my video today is all about sleep deprivation and sleep training. I haven't actually had to do any sleep training with my older two girls. They always just seem to sleep and I never had any issues. I was never sleep deprived or anything like that. But Ellie is a completely different kettle of fish, bless her. From the start, she's never really slept very well. She did have reflux when she was a baby, and I do think that had quite a lot to do with it. When we went on holiday in the summer, she was sleeping quite well actually. She only woke up once in the night while I was on holiday, and then when we got back, that is just when things started to go really downhill and she just really didn't sleep. Her nap times were really sporadic when she was little. She would only really nap for 20 or 30 minutes at a time. She never really had a long good nap, but then that did change and she did start to have better naps, but the night time sort of went to pot really. Like I said, she's nearly 11 months old and you'd think that she would be sleeping through by now, but she got into the habit of waking up every 2 hours and she would want milk to get her back to sleep. Now after months and months of this, I've actually become really sleep deprived, and it's actually gave me postnatal depression. It's affected like my marriage, it's affected my how I am with my kids, how I am with my family. I've just been that sleep deprived that life has just stopped really. Like every day it was, I'm just so tired, I can't get out of bed, I'm so tired, I can't function, I'm so tired, I can't be in a happy mood, I'm stressing at my kids, I'm stressing at my husband, I'm not cooking proper meals at home. I was literally just getting through the day just by being a zombie basically, and I never got any more than 2 hours sleep at a time before I was woke up. So on a night time I never really got a good stretch of sleep and it was just absolutely horrendous. I wouldn't wish sleep deprivation on anyone. Because my husband works away as well, I just found that I was going to end up really ill. Many a weekends I've just cried for a solid 8 hours, laid on the floor, in a heap on the floor, because it was just horrendous. Like I'm getting emotional now. The way I felt for Ellie's first year because of lack of sleep is awful, and I'll never get that time back, and it makes me guilty that I've let sleep deprivation win, if you know what I mean. But it's just been so hard, and I feel like a first time mum because Ellie has just been so different to my other two. I mean, it's been 6 and 10 years since I had a newborn before Ellie, and I don't know if it's because I was like in my 20s then and I'm in my 30s now, whether that's why I struggle more. But yeah, every day was just a struggle and I couldn't wait for bedtime. So I thought to myself, this can't carry on. I went to the health visitors and they couldn't help. They suggested everything that I'd already tried. Basically, I think that she wasn't going into a deep sleep cycle herself. She needed the milk to get her into that next sleep cycle. So she needed to be able to sleep herself. But for nap times, I would give her a milk and then I would put her in her cot and she would go to sleep. So she could get herself to sleep. It was just that in the night she couldn't. But even when I put her down for bed at night, she would still settle herself, but it was just the night wakings were the issue. And I just thought the only thing I can do is sleep train her. Yeah, so about 10 or 11 days ago, I was like, right, this has to stop. And I haven't done the controlled crying rigidly. I've sort of adapted it to my own way of doing it so that it wasn't as bad as just leaving her to cry. Because I know you're not actually meant to pick her up or do anything like that with controlled crying. So yeah, I've sort of adapted it. So sorry for the long intro and a bit of backstory, but I needed to let you know why I chose to do controlled crying, so that you would just know how bad it was and that I was desperate. So the first night I got her in the bath and we put some classical music on. I put some lavender in the bath and we just had a relaxing half an hour in the bath, and then I've done the same routine every day since she's been born. She has a bath, she goes to her bedroom, she has a massage, she has her milk and she goes to bed. I don't know if it was a fluke or not, but she did actually sleep for a couple of hours before she woke up. And then on the first feed, on the first waking, I always thought to myself, right, I'll give her some milk just in case it is actually hunger that she's waking up for. So that's what I did. When she first woke up, I gave her some milk. I winded her and everything like that, and I put her back in her bed. And then she woke up 2 hours later, and I stayed up with her until she stopped crying, which was around 2 hours, which was absolute torture. I hated every second of it. I cried and she cried, and it was just horrible. And I would just go, shh, it's night time now, it's night time now. I'd put her dummy back in and I would leave the room, and then after 2 minutes I would go back in. She was still crying by this point, so I would like get her back and I would just pat her back and rub her back, but it didn't really have any effect whatsoever. So again, I went out and I left it now for 2 minutes again. I went back in, did the same thing, and then I'd leave the room, and then I went back in after 5 minutes, and this time I picked her up and I gave her a cuddle, patted her back and let her calm down, and then I put her back in the cot. She was crying again by this point, but again I left the room for 5 minutes and then I come back in, and I did that for 2 hours. I did everything but give her milk. I lifted her up, I gave her a cuddle, I calmed her down, and I put her back in. I went shh, 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 and I patted her back, rubbed her back, and eventually after 2 hours she did go to sleep. Now during that time she wasn't crying for a solid 2 hours, and it was never hysterical crying, but it was crying, and she would calm down for a little amount of time, and I would think, oh, she's gone to sleep, but then a few minutes later she would start again. So yeah, the first night was horrible. It was 2 hours, and then I think she slept for 3 hours after that, so I think she'd probably tired herself out, to be honest. And then she woke up again, and I did the same thing again, and again it took nearly 2 hours. So yeah, and then she would sleep for maybe 2 or 3 hours. So the first night was horrendous. I felt horrendous because I'd had less sleep than normal, because I'd been up for longer instead of just giving her the milk, and then she'd be asleep. I was like not giving her a milk, so she was awake for 2 hours every time. So yeah, and then the next day she had like an hour and a half nap, and then she would have another nap in the afternoon, and then we would do the same thing again. The second night was pretty much the same as the first night, to be honest. She woke up 2.5 hours after going to sleep, so I just put her dummy in, and I also gave her a bit of milk because I weren't sure again if she was hungry. And she woke up then at 20 past midnight, so I went in, put her dummy in, and she still cried, so again I did the controlled crying. I went in after 2 minutes, did the shushing, the patting and the picking up, putting her back down, leaving the room for 2 minutes, coming back in for 5 minutes, coming back in for 2 minutes, going back out, leaving it 5 minutes, and you know, just repeating exactly the same thing that I'd done the previous night. And after 1.5 hours again, she finally fell asleep, and then she slept until 5:30. The third night was quite emotional. I put her to bed at around 7:30, and I did not hear a peep out of her until nearly 11 o'clock at night. And I actually cried because I thought, wow, 3 nights of controlled crying, and she's just slept for 5 hours nearly, which is the longest she has slept for, God, as long as I can remember. I was absolutely over the moon, and I just couldn't believe it. But she then woke up and I gave her some milk, and then she went to sleep for 3 more hours. Fifth night she woke up every 2 hours. I'm not sure if that was her teeth or something. And then the night after that was actually the night that we put her in her room for the first time, and she only woke up twice in the whole night. She slept for 5 hours, I fed her some milk, and then she woke up 4 hours later, gave her a little bit more milk, and then she fell asleep for another 2 hours. And then it was the same the next night as well. The third night in her own room, she actually woke up every 2 hours again. So I didn't do the controlled crying, I just gave her little bits of milk each time because I do think it was actually her teeth. And then the fourth night in her own room, she again only woke up twice. And then last night was her 5th night in her room, and again she woke up every 2 hours. But yesterday was a bit different because she didn't actually have an afternoon nap, and she normally does, and she always seems to sleep really bad when she's had no afternoon nap. So I think that was part of it as well, and plus maybe her teeth was hurting her. So tonight I'm going to make sure that she has 2 naps in a day. That seems to work pretty well. She does now sleep for 4 or 5 hours at a time. So at the minute that's where we're at. She's had 5 nights in her own room. 3 nights of that she's only woke up twice, and 2 nights she's woke up every 2 hours. We have definitely had an improvement with the sleep training. But yeah, please do hit that subscribe button, and just, yeah, let me know if you've had to deal with a baby that wakes up every 2 hours, and what did you do? Did you do controlled crying? Did you do any other method? Did you do co-sleeping? Because I've also done that as well. Yeah, just let me know that I'm not alone with this sleep deprivation and baby's not sleeping. And yeah, I hope that, you know, I can help you. I'm sorry it was a bit muffled and a bit rushed and things in places, but I wanted to try and get it out there as quick as I could without making the video too long. So hopefully I've managed to do that, and I will see you in my next one. Bye bye.